All right, students, this is a little recording on media bias. Maybe I didn't cover it enough in class. Found a great resource on the Student Daily News. Since we are doing on the role of media, this is a .com, but it is talked about by different educational sources as a way. They have tons of activities for students that help students become better. Anyhow, it talks about a reporter's job is to balance or present a balanced story. Then it talks about the types of bias. These are what I had said. So omission is leaving out one side of an article, ignoring the fact that tend to disprove a liberal or conservative claim. To find instances of bias of omissions, be aware conservatives and liberals have perspectives on both the current issues. So you'd need to use your notes how we discuss the difference between liberal and conservative. Bias by selection of sources, so including more sources that support one view than another. This bias can also be seen when a reporter uses phrase, experts believe, observers say, people say, but then they don't give the other point of view. Not all stories will include experts, but those that do make sure that an equal number of conservatives and liberals are quoted. If a story quotes non-experts, such as a portrayal of an average citizen, check to make sure there's an equal number from both sides of the issue. This third one, bias on story selection, a pattern of highlighting news stories that coincide with the agenda of the left or right, while ignoring stories that coincide with opposing views. So to identify bias by story selection, you'll need to know the conservative and liberal side of view. But then if charges of impropriety are leveled at two politicians in equal power, one liberal, conservative, they can compare. Bias of placement. So the story placement measures how important it is to the editor. Studies have shown that in cases of average newspapers, readers or average news stories, people only read the headlines. So bias by placing it where on a website or a newspaper, the article or the story is printed, the pattern of placing news stories so that it downplays the information. Second to last, bias by labeling comes from labeling in two forms versus a tagline of conservative, a group of extreme labels while leaving liberal positions unlabeled, or vice versa. And the second kind is by labeling, which occurs when a reporter not only fails to identify a liberal as a liberal or a conservative as a conservative, but describes the group with positive labels, such as an expert or independent consumer group. If expert is properly called a conservative or a liberal, the news or the consumer can take an ideological slant into account when evaluating the assertion. And then bias by spin occurs when a story only has one interpretation of the event or the policy and exclusion of the other. Spin involves tone. It's a reporter's subjective comments about the objective facts, makes a one-sided ideological perspective. So some examples of this, they give a few, but let's see what this says. NBC ignores the big story, and so they say, this is a story about Obama healthcare. Associated Press reports Obama healthcare hit by a double-digit premium hike. But then when you look at NBC or ABC, they said Obama's administration confirms double-digit hikes. It's official, double-digit hikes. CNN premium soared to 22%. And NBC did not run a story on their homepage at all. So that would be omission. In this case, NBC ignoring the big story is omission. Another example I liked was spending more time on Brangelina. Back when they made the big announcement, many people So this is ABC, spend too much time on the celebrity's marriage and little time on voter issues, the economy. So in this case, they have a chart that shows how many seconds were spent on Brangelina and how many spent on the U.S. economy. And this is during the coverage from September 1st to the 30th. Then one more example would be, let's see, is media biased towards Trump or Clinton? And so we look at some examples. Washington Post. How do the stories show whether they're positive and negative? We did a computer algorithm, increasingly common around scientists, and they actually began to show how, here we go. How favorable does each media outlet treat the candidates? Fox News, more favorable to Trump. Weekly Standard, more favorable to Trump, and so on and so forth. They used an actual algorithm to find who was favorable. So bias does happen, and I just thought I'd do a little mini lesson on that. Have a great day.